position in the National Assembly, Honorable Brian Munduvile. Let me also recognize Honorable Sanga, who I can see is the only member of Central Committee of the Patriotic Front Party here among us, and my honorable colleagues. I also recognize you, our colleagues from the Fourth Estate, and welcome you. These interactions have been very beneficial to the people of Zambia in the sense that the people are able to get more details in terms of the operations of these honorable members of parliament who are actually who are at the service of the electorate. Today we will have 5 speakers, and I will be allocating 5 minutes to each. We will have Honorable Mia Zulu to speak first, then we'll have Honorable Kapampi, we'll have Honorable Jim Chisenga, later we'll have Honorable Chisanga, and Honorable Brian Munduvile will actually be the last speaker. Honorable Mia Zulu has got an interest to address with the Anti-Corruption Commission today, and let's take time to listen to him without wasting time. Honorable Mia Zulu.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I've been quite of late, but I feel duty bound to speak. Friends, you are aware that the Anti-Corruption Commission has effected a number of arrests to businessmen and some politicians, former permanent secretaries. One of the issues they have done was the story that they went to freeze the accounts of Zambian businessman Savenda Group of companies. Further, they have paid a blind eye or ear to PAs of tourism who cancelled the hunting concessions. Remember that Lumezi has quite a number of game management areas, and that illegal cancellation of the hunting concessions was reported to the Anti-Corruption Commission by seasoned diplomat Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba. The ACC have failed to act. We call upon the Anti-Corruption Commission to self-introspect if their fight against corruption is not mere political witch hunt, or if they are there to protect the executive arm of government, because they have not briefed the nation as to how far they have gone with the issues of hunting concessions. They have not told the nation how much it will cost us to recover should they lose the cases in court against a vendor group of companies. When you look at fertilizer, the single sourcing of fertilizer to people that have no experience whatsoever in the industry, and farmers throughout the country are complaining there will be hunger next year. The Anti-Corruption Commission have not taken it up upon themselves to see and resolve the impasse that has been caused purely because someone decided to single source. There was enough time for the government to award the tender to contractors of fertilizer, but they chose to cause a late, they deliberately decided to cause this challenge for them to single source. The SEC should have gone for ZPPA, and the officials at the Ministry of Agriculture and anyone else at Attorney General's office involved in this scam, because it's a scandal. Unprecedented that fertilizer, when end of November, fertilizer is not being delivered. All we hear are stories after stories. The other thing, colleagues, that I want you to pick, I am an elected member of parliament by the people of Lumezi, and my election was reconfirmed by the High Court of the Republic of Zambia and reconfirmed by the Constitutional Court. Now, at parliament, we are being treated as if we're in boarding school. We've been indicating to speak from the floor of the House on these things. The presiding officers have never recognized us. And you friends that we rely on to disseminate information, get me right. It's not that we do not want to speak on your behalf or to ask on your behalf. We are blocked. Some of us have been blacklisted from the vetting. If you read Article 76(1) of the Republican Constitution, it gives me my privileges of speech on the floor of the House. Article 76(1), read together with our standing orders 202, gives me authority and the privilege to speak from the floor of the House. The presiding officer is not my boss. Her job is to preside. But what is happening here is a circus, to say the least. The rule of law they're talking about does not exist. When they say human rights, I was laughing today. We want to discuss human rights when your members' rights are not respected and appreciated. Here at Parliament building, what type of a country are we trying to build? I rarely speak here, but I feel that I need to communicate with citizens that, look, there are a lot of wrong things taking place, but we speak at the mercy of the presiding officer. The presiding officer can wake up and say, tomorrow, you are not going to come here with a cell phone. Tomorrow, you will not get your sitting allowance. Look, I was suspended. I will not talk about whether it was legal or illegal, because the matter is before court. How did I survive 30 days without a sitting allowance of 2,000 kwacha? It's a circus to be told that you will not get your sitting allowance for speaking for the people that elected us. 2,000 kwacha is money that we can use to buy talk time and not to be used for us not to speak. We are here to speak for our people and not to be threatened that when you speak, you will not get your 2,000 kwacha. We are ready to lose that 2,000 kwacha for standing on behalf of the people that brought us here. We did not come here on our own accord. We were elected. If anything, the people that should lose that 2,000 kwacha are those people that are blocking us from speaking for the people. They're the ones that should lose their sitting allowances because they're not doing their job right. They are not going to curtail us because of the 2,000 kwacha, because that is tantamount to blackmail, and we shall not accept to be blackmailed. We are people's representatives. And this message should equally go to the head of state. If he's influencing decisions to be made at Parliament, he's left with 2 years, 2 more budgets. The third budget is not guaranteed that his Minister of Finance will read the budget in 2026. This message should be well received by the Republican president to control the people that he controls when we are not present. 31st of December, there will be an increment in fuel, there will be an increment with electricity. That is what they should be addressing, and not stopping us from speaking on behalf of the people that brought us to Parliament. If anything, that 2,000 kwacha is not coming from the head of state. That 2,000 kwacha is not coming from the presiding officer. It's coming from you, the people that sent us here. So we shall not accept to be blackmailed. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Munia Zulu, I sincerely thank you for your submission. My friends from the media, the issues that my honorable colleague has brought to you for dissemination are very important. It's my sincere hope that these views, can go everywhere so that the Zambian people can see where we are headed to as a nation. Last week, 2 very important issues were raised here, bordering on agriculture and the illegal audit of defense forces by private audit firms. Obviously, those 2 stories, created a lot of movement in social media and everywhere, and I'm sure it has caused a lot of panic in many quarters. This is why some of you could have observed that this morning, when the leader of opposition brought out the same subject, asking our Honor the Vice President why we've had 3 high-ranking people speaking to it, starting with Her Honor herself last Friday, Honorable Dr. Msokotwani yesterday on the floor of the House, and Honorable Ifuma in one of the tabloids. They are all just speaking things which are contrary to each other. So he asked the question, what motivated government to break the law in the manner they did? And I think Her Honor the Vice President wasn't fair. She actually laughed at his question and said he didn't mention the law, which was broken. When I got a chance to speak, I wanted to highlight the law which has been broken, which is Part 7 and Section 73 of the Public Financial Management Act of 2018. I was stopped from speaking. And when Honorable Mlia talks about being stopped from speaking, that's a practical example. The question I wanted to ask was completely different. Completely different, but I just wanted to highlight that there is a law which has been broken. UPND government has broken a law by having Ministry of Finance contracting private auditors to audit defense forces because the law doesn't provide for that. Only one person has got a mandate to do that, and that is the Auditor General. And the Auditor General also cannot do that unless he has written permission from the President. So these are matters that should not die. These are matters that should continue being talked about. And this afternoon, we have Honorable Kapampi, carrying forward the conversation around agriculture. Honorable Kapampi.
Thank you so much. Let me start by recognizing the presence of our leader of the opposition, the MCC present here, my fellow members of Parliament, and the media present. I'll continue. I think even last time I spoke to the issue of the farming inputs. The Minister of Agriculture on Wednesday came to the House to present a ministerial statement concerning the farming inputs. It was a very sorry sight to hear the minister saying as Wednesday, 16th, we were at 57% of fertilizers being either delivered in the country or still at the border. Now the questions we should be asking ourselves, even from the media, is today is the 18th, and the 57% that we're talking about, it's not that all the 57% has already reached Zambia and it's at the depots, or it's either at the warehouses for different constituencies. These fertilizers, others are at the border and others are on transit. So the thing is, when will we receive the remaining 43%? Already this is telling us that come next year, we'll have a very serious hunger situation in this country. So what I would urge the government is, probably if they can even declare it as a disaster, because every constituency, including constituencies which are held by members of UPND, they are all complaining about how this fertilizer support program has been handled. The issue they promised the people to say they will be getting 6 packs. That is not the case which is on the ground. If you were to find out, it is again something which is happening in all the constituencies. People are sharing fertilizer. And this would even affect our production. Because if we were meant to produce maybe 2 hectares, but because of you've been given less fertilizer, definitely that would affect your production. So let the government come out and open and tell the people of Zambia the truth. What is it that is happening in the country? He was asked a question to do with the supply of Beso dressing, D-compound by nitrogen chemicals of Zambia. Nitrogen Chemicals of Zambia was given to deliver 47 metric tons of fertilizer. But as at the 16th on Wednesday, they had already only done 20 metric tons. When will they do the remaining 27 metric tons? These are the questions which us Zambians, we should be worried to say, come next year, definitely there will be a problem when it comes to mini meal. As much as they're saying they've got enough stocks of maize in the reserves, what will happen once those stocks are finished? So these are the things whereby if they had engaged the right people who had always been supplying fertilizers, we could have not been at the situation which we are now. What happened when PF took over government from MMD? We basically took on the people who were distributing fertilizers from MMD. But with them, it has been turned into a political thing to say the people who have been supplying government with fertilizers, they are PF or cadres, which is not true. You can agree with me that when PF came into power, all the people we found who were distributing fertilizers to the government, those are the people we took on and continued with them. This is the problem which we have now experienced, is because they've engaged people who are not experienced when it comes to fertilizer distribution and the procuring of fertilizer. So what I can say to the media, go out there and inform our people what is happening on the ground, or get the information and disseminate to everyone so that we really know who is telling the truth and who is not telling, who is telling lies. This government promised people to say they will get fertilizer on time and the distribution would also be on time. But what is it now? That has gone wrong, that fertilizers have not reached the intended beneficiaries. And again, there is a thing which is happening on the ground whereby farmers are being removed from the program without not even being told or being prepared to say, oh, come this farming season, you are not going to be part of the people who are going to benefit from the farming support program. And again, the most critical thing is there were those farmers who were left from last year who didn't receive the inputs, and yet they are even paid their deposits. One funny thing, even those farmers who had even paid the deposits for last year, still waiting to receive their fertilizers for the previous farming input, most of them have been removed from the program. So as Zambians, let's see who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth. We were called all sorts of names, PF. But I'm sure people will judge for themselves to see which government really performed well when it comes to farm support inputs. With these few remarks, I submit the check.
Honorable Kapampi, MP from Mansabongwe, thank you so much for your submission. Colleagues, we are in problems as a nation because food has become so expensive. If the UPND government was serious about alleviating the suffering of the people of Zambia, this is the time they should have focused on agriculture. Allow me to request Honorable Jimson to address the same subject, agriculture. Honorable Jimson.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, colleagues from the media. Allow me to rise on the protocols that have been earlier observed, and I recognize the presence of the leader of opposition. I'm Honorable Chisenga, Member of Parliament of Mandima constituency in Luapula province, and I wish to speak on the subject that my friend is just talking about, also agriculture. Before I actually even go further, I want to put it on record to say the UPND government does not have regard for the agriculture sector like the PF did. You see, no one can live without agriculture and food, they say. During the PF time, the budgetary allocation to the agriculture sector was massive, and PF really had regard for the agriculture sector, not what the UPN, not what we are witnessing under the UPND government. And I'll also say this, during the PF government, around June and July, and let me say latest August, farming inputs would have been delivered to the rest of to every part of the country. But here we are, this is November, the rains have begun, and it's almost, the year is almost coming to an end. People have not received fertilizers. People have not, they cannot even plant because they don't know if their fertilizers will be given to them. Now look at this. Last month I was in my constituency, and that is when people were able to pay for their fertilizers. You can imagine. You can imagine people are paying for their fertilizers last month. They still have to wait for a long time, which we don't even know. Because as we speak, where people are receiving fertilizers, where other people have received fertilizers, they are sharing. So if people are sharing fertilizers, then what kind of harvest are we going to have as a nation? So this is very sad, and 2026, come 2026, no matter how much storage they say we have for the country to feed us up to a certain time, it's not going to be good for the entire nation, because definitely we are going to have a hunger in the country. And the advice that we had given to the UPND was that maintain the cooperatives that were there earlier as they carry on, just like the Honorable from Savombe had mentioned. We advised that they maintain the cooperatives that had already existed, so that the new ones can come and be added in the 2026-2027 farming season. That advice fell on deaf ears, and that is one of the challenges that we have. Others have been replaced and new ones have been put in without even understanding what system, or because you're supposed to use an old system, because for you to introduce a new system, you could have studied it well in advance. Because if you don't, you're trying to bring a problem from the old. You don't understand what the old was, and you're trying to bring in something new that will cause a disaster. Ladies and gentlemen, things are not as good as they are perceiving it on the media, in the newspapers, and even on the floor of the House. I cannot believe a whole lot of a minister could say, you will share fertilizers. Maybe, let me say a cooperative gets a certain number of fertilizers. Because it's not enough, they will have to share. So now the minister advises to say, you are going to give those fertilizers to one person to grow the crops, so that at the end of it all you will share. It doesn't work like that. Because in my language we say, insala nindiminwa tempugirwa iyo. Meaning every person or every household has a responsibility to have a certain crop or a certain land that they're supposed to grow for their own consumption, so that at least they can have something to rely on even when times are hard. Not necessarily for sale, but someone should have something to grow for consumption. Now, even when we talk about delay, the reason why inputs were delivered before the rainy season is very obvious. We all know that. Inputs are supposed to be delivered before the rainy season. Why? We do not have good road network. That is just obvious. So if they are saying 54% of the fertilizers have been delivered to, they are at the borders and they have not actually been delivered, what is going to be the status of the road networks where these fertilizers are going? It is very sad, and I wish to put it on record that the UPND has literally and lamentably failed the agriculture sector. They should come out in the open, and they should actually think of a plan, because come 2026, genuinely speaking, and to be honest, we are going to have a crisis in the country. I submit.
Honorable Jim Chisenga, thank you so much for your submission. I just want to agree with you that things are really bad in our country. And one of the reasons I can confirm that things are bad is that all these endless concessions that have been given to the mining sector, the plan is to begin to benefit from them 9 years from now. 9 years from now, UPND may not even be in power. Can you imagine when there is hunger in the nation, when things are so expensive, you are formulating policies to benefit the people 9 years from now? between now and 9 days, people are sleeping hungry. Anyway, just something urgent has come up. So I'd like to squeeze in Honorable Paduma Karogo, the MP from the mining town of Kitwe, to address a matter on mining. And he is our chairman for the Committee on Mines in the National Assembly. Honorable Karogo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moderator. I recognize the presence of our leader in the Parliament, Honorable Mondule, all members of Central Committees present, fellow members of Parliament, all media present here. I just want to address an issue which occurred in Parliament last week when the UPND MP, Member of Parliament from Fumbwe, asked the Minister of Mines whether the CCMH is competitive or not. The Minister of Mines, Honorable Kabuswe, informed the House and the nation through Parliament that the CCMH was not competitive and it was going to be competitive under the New Dawn. And in a follow-up question, I did ask him whether for him to insinuate that that company, the CMIH, was competitive or not, if they had looked at the dividends that the CMIH has been declaring. And in his response, he also indicated that dividends are never part of the parameters that are used when determining the company whether it is competitive or not. Again, that was a pure lie, because when you talk of dividends, for a company to declare good dividends, it means the financial statement is positive. And maybe it doesn't know, it was going to die. The CMIH is competitive, it is very viable. It is going to die under the New Dawn. And I'm going to demonstrate what that means. Firstly, maybe let me share with you that the CMIH is a diversified investment company listed under 3 stock exchanges: Lusaka Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange, Euronext in Paris. And again, the CMIH is competitive because it has been declaring what? Good dividends. Currently, what has happened, or maybe also maybe we try and put maybe a definition for competitiveness. Maybe that is what led to a wrong answer. Competitiveness is the ability of the company to produce goods and services with a quality price ratio that is guaranteed to attract a fair market share. That's what it means. And this diversified investment portfolio for the CMIH is in mining, also financial sector, investors, if you may wish to know. Also, there is a motion meeting. So the CMIH is viable. And he bemoaned the status of the CMIH being a diversified investment company. He said they want to remove all those things and just focus on mining. Even currently, it focuses on mining. Now, I said it's going to die under the New Dawn. Why? Because it has been taken to IDC and lumped together with other 29 state-owned companies that are associated with the traditional challenges of like loss-making, non-competitiveness, high wage bill compared to the revenue ratio, and among others. So I wanted to share with you and the nation that that answer was misleading, and just an appeal that we are making as we are coming from the copper belt. Let them save this CMIH by removing it from the IDC and let it stand alone, run on its own. Maybe I bring another example how effective this CMIH has been. You saw the agreement between Vendetta, Grenco, and the government, where the CMIH took over Mopani. I'll just pick one for the interest of time. There are 4 shafts at Mopani. I'll pick Synchronium shaft. Under Grenco, they were producing 45,000 metric tons. When ZCMIH took over through the government, they started producing 90,000, doubled the production. They've come on board. They've created problems to try and paint a picture that we can't run mines. Even still, they are producing 55,000 metric tons, still 10,000 higher than what Glencore was producing. So this ZCMIH, we are capable of running these mines. And we are coming from the copper belt. This politics they are doing in mining, it will not help them. Because under the PF, even when they got back Vendetta, suppliers were being paid. Even those people who are not paid by Vendetta for 1 year and some months were all paid. Business started going to the Zambian contractors and suppliers. Even at Mopani, it's the first time in history, in the existence of Mopani, where suppliers are not being paid. Leader of opposition, I think I needed just to share that part here. There's a lot, but with interest of time, I end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Honorable Kazuma Kalobo, MP for Sakile. Thank you so much for that submission. So obviously, Honorable Brian Munduvile, MP from Porokoso Central and leader of opposition in the House, will have to wind down our conversation. But just before he does that, it is important for us to listen to a senior leader mind. You can be jumping about all the fertilizers and all the audit issues and ignoring legal minds. Honorable Chisanga, MP for Education.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, moderator. I recognize the leader of the opposition, Central Committee member, Honorable Brian Munduvile, all my colleagues, members of parliament who are with me here. I'm going to speak to just two things very briefly, basically to progress the debate that we've had on the unconstitutional audit that is currently underway, where our security rules are being audited. I'm also just going to give a brief update on the position that PF has taken on the by-election that have just recently passed. But before I say that, because I know that the media is covering the whole nation, just allow me under 30 seconds to make an NS call to the Republican president, because I also come from a constituency that is rural, and most of our members in the constituency are farmers, small-scale farmers, who have been adversely affected by this controversial implement supply experience that we've had in the recent past. I would just like to make an NS call, a friendly call, to His Excellency the Republican President to undertake a serious investigation in what has transpired. Maybe he's not being told the truth about the actual scenario of the people who are affected by this poor supply of implements this year. I know that my colleagues have covered most of that substance, but I also continue to receive phone calls and engagements from even some senior members of the government from the province who have actually said there's quite a disaster, and we expect serious cases of hunger to face our people in the next year. But my subject today is basically talking about this audit that we keep questioning. And if you saw what happened, the Honorable Kafwaya has touched on it. Today we had to leave the House so that we could go and consult further, because we felt that we had wanted to continue that debate on the public audit of our security wings, because we believe sincerely that the nation is entitled to accurate information about what those who are entrusted with governing the nation are doing with their security wings. We are a sovereign state, and when we think that our security is being undermined because of what is happening by those who are governing us, we have the right to put questions to them and to demand answers. I have discussed with you before that our debate on this matter is based on Articles 249 and Article 250 of the Constitution and Section 73 of the Public Finance Management Act and Section 5 of the Public Audit Act. A combination of the reading of these provisions has clearly demonstrated that this government has abrogated the Constitution and has breached the law in the manner in which they have gone about to appoint these auditors. We have made a very strong case that this matter needs to be examined, and if government can demonstrate greatness, they need to reverse the decision they have made of appointing user-friendly audit firms to conduct an audit of public institutions which are custodians of security for the nation. The fact that we were curtailed even today just goes to demonstrate even more that maybe there is something that the public is not being taught about how this was done. You know, people have asked questions. Why is PF insisting on asking this question? We just believe that we have sworn to uphold the Constitution. We have also sworn an oath of allegiance to the Republican president. And if we think that the Republican president is doing something that is unconstitutional, we remind ourselves of the duty that we have taken, of the oath that we have taken to point the president to the right direction. There is nothing sinister about the questions that we are asking. And some people are even beginning to mock the Patriotic Front, that maybe we are afraid of these audits. I have said before to the media, and I can only repeat here, that if these audits are going to be undertaken, one, professionally, and two, objectively, we are very convicted that they're not going to find anything untoward on the conduct of the PF when it was in government. But it was because our colleagues are insisting on witch hunting, and they're only prepared to sidestep the provisions of the law to conduct this audit. And the misfortune with that kind of witch hunting, you know, sometimes when you go around on a farm and you're looking for a needle in a haystack, even if the needle is not there, you will find it. Because what you want to do is to justify the end without considering the means. We are only reminding our colleagues that there is a means that is provided for in the Constitution and in the statutes that are applicable to the Auditor General's conduct of business. The Auditor General is a constitutional office, and the job that he's supposed to conduct is well laid out in the provisions. What is quite surprising about this whole thing is that from the time this fiasco started up, we have not heard anything from the Auditor General. That should send a message to the public that there's something wrong with what is going on. Why is the Auditor General quiet? Why are people trying to defend the office of the Auditor General? And even when they're trying to do it, why are they sidelining it? The Secretary of Treasury made the statement clearly that when they were doing this contract, the Auditor General was not involved. But we remind them that under the statute, he is the one who's supposed to lead the process of subcontracting. And when he subcontracts, there's a section that Honorable Kafwaya wanted to bring to the attention of the Vice President in the House, Section 5.3. There are conditionalities that are attached to an audit that is subcontracted by the Auditor General to a private audit firm. It requires, among other things, a written consent from the President for you to engage a private audit firm because of the need for us to ensure that we've got national security, which is not going to be compromised by a private audit firm. All these issues are very important, and no amount of running out from them is going to justify what this government has done. They just need to honor and come to the public and give the Zambian people the correct information regarding what transpired. If mistakes were made, and we know our colleagues are human, they are capable of making mistakes just like we do, that we would make mistakes. But if mistakes are made, greatness is demonstrated by ensuring that you correct the mistakes that you made, and people are given the correct information, and you do the work in accordance with what is laid down in the law. So we repeat our position, and we're not going to relent in reminding the UPND government that they have a public duty to do things correctly. Regarding the by-elections that took place, you've heard our colleagues have been bragging. You know, in fact, they started bragging with Kabushi and Kwacha that they're now gaining popularity because they are winning in places where they would not have won previously. But the Kabushi and Kwacha misfortune is well documented. We know what transpired. If I was UPND, I would not even brag about what happened in Kabushi and Kwacha. But see, our colleagues became buoyed up with what they did in Kabushi and Kwacha. And when we had other by-elections, and I'll single out the ones in Lusangazi, the ones in Mwense, and in Mkushi, and I'll speak about Gwembe just briefly. The ones in Mwense, Mkushi, and Lusangazi were characterized by serious cases of electoral malpractices. All these malpractices are documented, and we knew they were instigated by the UPND. So even the victory that they are bragging about was not objectively obtained. We have instructed our lawyers, after we called our candidates to Lusaka, we examined what transpired, and we have instructed our lawyers to ensure that there are challenges to these elections of the council chairmanships. And we expect that the tribunals are going to act in accordance with the law, and whenever wrongs that were committed are found, we expect the tribunals to objectively make a decision that is in accord with the expectations of the people. Democracy is about giving people an opportunity to elect a person of their choice. And any amount of political malpractice should result in the nullification of that election. It's just what it is. The case of Gwembe was even more unfortunate because what we came to discover was scary. We came to discover that our candidates were not even allowed to go and file their nominations. On the date of nomination, which is the 13th of October 2022, our candidates, accompanied by our officials, wanted to go and file their nominations. They were brutalized, they were victimized, they were assaulted, and they were not made to file those nominations. Unfortunately, that resulted in an election in Gwembe in the 2 wards not taking place, because ultimately what happened is only UPND candidates were able to file their nominations. Now, I don't know whether you call that an election, or a misplacement of an election, because an election requires that 2 political parties or 3 political parties each sponsor a candidate, and those candidates are allowed, in accordance with the Electoral Act and the Constitution, to file their nominations. And our colleagues decided to prevent our candidates from filing their nominations. Unfortunately, by the time this information came to the attention of Central Committee, it was too late for us to go and file any challenges to those elections, because of course our people were intimidated. In fact, our candidates even now are hiding somewhere in Gwembe, because they wanted to make sure the timelines that are set by the law for them to come and file these complaints has passed. Now, this is a party that said it was going to govern by the rule of law. I leave it to you, the pressmen, and I leave it to the nation to begin to examine and assess whether what is happening is constitutional, whether what is happening is in accordance with the rule of law. We are also aware that we expect a lot of by-elections to come, because our friends have decided that they will crush the Patriotic Front come June 2023. Now we have heard that most of our councillors are being enticed to take government positions to start working. You see, UPND is prepared to conduct itself regardless of whether it is going to, the nation is going to incur expenses to replace those councillors, because every councillor is going to resign, there will have to be a by-election in the ward. Every chairperson is going to resign, there's going to be a by-election in the ward. Is this the democracy that Zambians wanted? We leave it up to you. I'm very gratified because today I noticed that the bishops of the Catholic Church have issued a statement which touches on so many issues, including by-elections. It is now very clear that these guys are going to continue sponsoring by-elections to ensure that we lose our grip, especially in constituencies where we have sitting councillors and chairpersons, so they can gain ground themselves. Now, this is destroying democracy. It is not destroying the Patriotic Front. And my urge to our councillors who are sitting, please remember the duty you've got to the public that put you in those offices. Everybody in this country is sacrificing, including the UPND. There are genuine people within the UPND who are sacrificing and are complaining. But those who are hell-bent on destroying our economy, our democracy, those who are hell-bent on undermining our constitution and the rule of law, they will be so determined to ensure that we continue having by-elections for the next 1 year. We, as Patriotic Front, will do what is right. If we lose a candidate, we will find another candidate. If we lose a councillor, we will find another candidate. We will sponsor that candidate. It will be up to the Zambians to begin to defend the ethos of democracy that we started in 1991. If you choose to defend democracy, you will vote for the Patriotic Front. So that will continue on the tally that we started on 12 August 2021. If you choose to undermine democracy, you are going to be making choices that are going to question whether we're going to be existing as a thriving democracy in 2026. We have offered ourselves for leadership, and we're still in these positions. We have a mandate up to 2026. And our hope is that we'll come and renew our mandate with people now clearly understanding where this country is being led by our colleagues who are in government. But I thought I'd make a statement that we are not going to relent. We will be pointing to the wrongs the government is doing. We are not going to relent. We will seek to protect our positions, both in Parliament and even in the wards where we're losing our councillors because of the sponsored by-elections. Mr. Chairman, thank you very, very much.
Honorable George Chisanga, MP for Lukasha and the former Law Association of Zambia President. Thank you very much for your submission. Friends, we are living in very interesting times. Interesting in a very, very bad way, because of the poor leadership of the UPND government. Honorable Leader of Opposition, for me, I've made a promise to myself. If the outcome of the illegal audit ever finds itself on the floor of the House, I, Mutotwe Kafwaya, MP for Lunde, will walk out. I will not participate in fostering illegality. Colleagues, allow me now to call upon the Leader of Opposition to wind up the debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Kafwaya. who this afternoon was our Director of Ceremonies. I recognize the presence of members of Central Committee, members of Parliament, including our dear colleague and vibrant Member of Parliament for Lumezi, Comrade Munia Zulu, who has spoken very passionately about parliamentary procedure. Members of the press, to you all I say, Mlishani Wonsem Kwai. Maukabwa? This is too late for Maukabwa? But I think we're getting somewhere. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I'll take a few minutes just to sum up the statements that my colleagues have delivered this afternoon. The starting point, and I think the elephant in the room, is the manner in which the UPND have destroyed the agriculture sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to draw your attention to the many campaign promises that the UPND made to the Zambian people, including the farmers. What's very interesting is that if we took two big economic sectors, ideally we're talking about mining and agriculture. If you look at the level of preparedness of the UPND in the mining sector, is compared to their preparedness, is not compared to any other sector. What I'm saying is that 2 months after the UPND government took over government, they were able to give concessions to the mining sector to the extent that the government or country was to lose its revenue up to 3.2 billion kwacha. I want you to understand that very clearly. Here is a government, which has a party which has taken up government, and within 2 months, they make that policy decision. Meaning, whilst in opposition, sitting as an alternative government, they did their research, did their studies, and prepared sufficiently to come up with these policies. A policy which has led our country to lose up to 3 billion kwacha per year. So this year we're losing 3.2 billion. Another 2.8 or 3 billion next year. Remember, I'm talking about two economic sectors. One of them being mining and the other being agriculture. What is very clear about these two sectors is that the mining sector, the participants in that sector are predominantly foreigners and the elite. The rich people of this world are in that mining sector. So these are the ones the UPND government have gone ahead to give concessions of up to 3.2 billion kwacha. This is the money that should have gone to the poor people, but it's now given to the rich people in the mining sector. I want us to be very clear about that. The agricultural sector, which is one sector where even the poorest of the poor can play or participate, is this sector that we're talking about today. It's a sector which has been neglected. We have said it time and again, and I'm happy that we are now beginning to witness this. We say this to the Zambian people. The difference between the UPND and the PF is that UPND is for the rich and PF is for the poor people. PF espouses principles or policies that advance the interests of the poor. The UPND advances the interests of the rich. That is the message I got for the Zambian people. If anybody had doubt, here we are now, within 2 months of assuming office, 3.2 billion, 2.8 billion to the mining companies. The UPND government came up with a budget which we've been using since 1st of January. Are you sure? What is so difficult about procuring fertilizers and seed? What is so difficult about that? It's budgeted for and the money is there. And 11 months later, there is no fertilizer. But in 2 months after assuming office, you were able to give concessions to the mining houses. What is so difficult about fertilizer procurement? We advise them on the floor of the House. We advise them on the floor of the House, like Honorable Kampampi had put it. They are traditional suppliers of these agricultural inputs. They've been there. They were there during UNIP, during MMD and PF. They therefore are not PF companies. We asked Honorable Minister, are you sure you're only doing the procurements now? And because the UPND government does not pay attention, does not care about the plight of the poor people, it didn't matter. Zambians, our dear farmers, in January this year, the UPND didn't think about you. In February this year, the UPND did not think about you. In March, they did not think about you. They only came to remember you in July, when the minister came with a statement on the floor of the House to talk about procurement. Now, how can you leave out a sector where the majority of the citizens participate and focus on a sector where only very few rich elites participate? We are happy that now it's abundantly clear to the Zambian people where the interests of the UPND really lie. They will always promote the interests of the rich. And remember, I'll keep repeating this, even as they give an impression that they're fighting corruption, we have to always interrogate this fight against corruption. The corruption that is detrimental to our people, the poor people, is the corruption that you can't see. The corruption that our SEC cannot see. Because we have redefined corruption here. We said corruption should be looked at in a wider concept. It should not be looked at as the mere giving or taking of bribes. But we should look at actions that put private interests above public interest in relation to policy, legislation, and administration. So if you ask me, my view is that to allow or to give concessions to mining houses where the government loses 3.2 billion kwacha per year is corruption. Because I do not think the interests of the public were taken into consideration. Had the government taken into account the interests of the public, in this particular case, today we would have had 2 million people benefiting from the fertilizer input support program. Today we would have had fertilizers all over the country, and the numbers of beneficiaries would have increased. Look at it this way. How many people, how many Zambians are participating in mining for this government to give concessions up to 3.2 billion? How many farmers are waiting for fertilizers all over the country? So someone has got to convince me that this is not a typical case of corruption. So ladies and gentlemen, the issue of fertilizer is very, very serious. What follows there is the policy inconsistency. Up to now, even me as a member of parliament, I don't really know what is happening in this sector. Let's assume that we have all the fertilizer that we need today. Can you imagine that it's not even known who the beneficiaries are? Because the government is not clear. I remember when I served as minister of the province, we interrogated this matter and realized that, as a matter of fact, in as much as we talk about cooperatives, the support that is given to the farmers is given per beneficiary, per individual. That is the reason why, when you used your e-voucher, is every individual farmer going to swipe and getting their fertilizer. But when the minister comes on the floor, he will be referring to cooperatives. It's the Ministry of Agriculture which has caused this confusion. They sent letters all over the country instructing district agriculture officers to share or include the new cooperatives on the list. Now here is the joke. The quantum of support or the numbers of bags of fertilizers that have been supplied to those districts have been the same odd numbers. And he expected every individual or beneficiary to get the same number, yet have introduced new members without increasing the number of bags of fertilizer or the number of packs. We asked the minister this question: can you be clear? Who is supposed to receive this fertilizer? Is it a cooperative or is it an individual? Because remember, a cooperative can have 25 people, it can have 50 people, it can have 100 people. So can you be clear, minister? And he was unable to answer. So the policy inconsistency coming out of the Ministry of Agriculture is worrying. we want to call upon the minister to take this sector seriously. Minister of Agriculture, immediately, can you sit down with your team and consider going back to the e-voucher so that some of these challenges that we're facing can be done away with? Remember, we had challenges with the e-voucher all for one reason. The biggest reason was communication. This was a system that was making use of the ICT technology. Now, because in many areas at that time, we had not yet finished erecting towers, something that I think we have done now. So could you migrate this program, Minister of Agriculture, to e-voucher so that the sectors can end? And at the same time, going forward, Minister of Agriculture, ensure that you give priority to this sector, like your government has given priority to the mining sector, a sector of the rich. May I take this opportunity now to call upon the President of this Republic, President Hakainde Hichilema, to urgently address the nation. He must address the nation on this issue of fertilizer so that he can put to rest the anxieties that have been rising in our farmers. Can he reassure the farmers that he is committed into looking into the affairs of the poor? Can the President reassure our poor farmers that should the harvest be poor, he's going to ask his Minister of Finance to come with a supplementary budget to ensure that we give relief food to our people? We call upon the President to urgently address the nation. He cannot keep quiet. The President can no longer keep quiet on this matter. This is a disaster. This has never happened in our country ever since independence. It's the first time, even after the PF made efforts to improve the output and yield in the agricultural sector. What we have seen is that in the past year, the yield went down by 25%. We don't know what will happen next year. So we're calling upon the President to come and address the nation over this matter, like we're calling upon the Minister to go back to the e-voucher, as it were. So colleagues, very briefly, we talked about, Comrade Sanga and the other members talked about this illegal audit, which has been implemented by the Minister of Finance. They signed contracts, giving contracts to friendly or user-friendly audit and consultancy firms. These are firms connected to politically exposed persons within the UPND. And yet the song remains, talking about the fight against corruption. The very things that they condemn, giving contracts to friends. In this particular case, they are giving contracts to friends, one, without following procedure, two, by breaking the law. And tomorrow they should come to you and talk about the fight against corruption. We want to advise Grant Thornton and Price Waterhouse to withdraw from those audits immediately. Those audits are illegal. Withdraw from them. The contracts that were given are illegal. They remain illegal. We want to tell you that we will take up these matters in the courts of law. We are taking up these matters in the courts of law because clearly the Ministerial Code of Conduct has been broken. The law has been broken, and we cannot sit idle as members of Parliament, representatives of the people, watching these illegalities continuing. So, members of the press, for those that have been covering this particular subject, please know, you heard for yourselves. Our Honor the Vice President could not respond to the questions that we asked. Go back to your offices, go and read the Public Audit Act of 2016, specifically at section 24.3. Go and read the Public Finance and Management Act of 2018, and specifically under Part 7, Section 73. You will find that the UPND government broke the law when contracting these two audit firms. One, the law is very clear. It's only the Auditor General who can subcontract or contract those services. In the case of defense forces and intelligence units, it's the Auditor General with express permission from the President. None of these two are applicable in the procedure that Minister of Finance followed. Because we were told on the floor of the House yesterday that the one who signed those agreements, contracts, was Secretary of the Treasury. And secondly, there was no express permission from the president. So it's not a matter that we needed to debate on further, but other than to ask the government to first of all, come out in the open and stop those audits immediately. And secondly, come out in the open to apologize for these omissions. It will not help anyone. It's all over. It's very clear. It's not the Auditor General. And we want to warn the Auditor General also. Don't be used as a sacrificial lamb. We don't expect you to come up tomorrow, Auditor General, to tell the nation that it was you who signed these agreements. We know you did not sign. That's why you've been quiet. So remain quiet as we wait for the minister to make an apology. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I wish to thank you most sincerely for your time, and thank you, honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Brian Munduvile, MP from Porokoso Central and Leader of Opposition in the National Assembly of Zambia. Talking about apology, which I also believe should happen, an apology to the Zambian people by the UPND government for breaking the law, even when they have been advised. I want to apologize to you, the Fourth Estate. I want to apologize to you, the media, for the manner in which UPND police arrested Innocent, your fellow journalists from Movie TV. I thought that was poor, I thought it was bad, I thought it was inhuman, and I think that it should not happen. Can you imagine, my friends, you are here covering your leaders, speaking to the nation, and you are arrested. Is that a country we want to live in? I apologize to you, and I hope the UPND will apologize for all these ills that they are making. Let me now, on that apology, close the meeting and wish you all the very best. Thank you so much. Thank you.